Hello, Tech Pros, episode 132.
Is every next mile going to be hard? Yeah, it's going to be hard. But boy, the reward at the end, you can't savor it enough. So just keep plugging away. That 22-mile marker, it's there. It's around the corner. Just keep plugging away.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week, we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Matt Rehm. Happy Saturday, Matt.
Happy Saturday to you.
Are you ready to hustle this weekend?
Oh, looking forward to it as always.
Awesome. Matt Rehm is a data guy. Most of his career has been spent in supply chain, sales analytics, and e-commerce. The last 15 years has been in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industries. He is also one of podcasting's biggest fans and is the founder of PodXRef.com. Matt and his beautiful wife have 3 daughters, and they live in the Chicagoland area. And I actually met Matt in the Chicagoland area just a few weeks ago at the Podcast Movement Conference. That was my first time there. I've mentioned it a couple times on the show. It was amazing. There was like 1,000, 1,500, just a ton of podcasters there. And I met Matt, and it was very, very interesting conversation about the technology that he's building to help support podcasters like me. And so I asked him a little bit about his website and the technology and his entrepreneurship journey. And as we started getting into it, I was like, dude, hang on, time out, hold the phone. Don't tell me anymore. Let's keep the rest a secret and a surprise, because I want to have you on the show to talk about this stuff, because I know my audience loves startup stories. They love entrepreneurship stories. And I can't wait to share yours on the show today.
Well, I'm happy to share it. It was always it was great to meet you, Chad, and I think we had a great conversation. And yeah, the buzz there at the podcast movement was pretty evident in everyone I spoke to.
Yeah, it was amazing just being around that community of. What I took out of it was a really, really supportive community. I've been in other communities, other conferences that just felt really salesy. Like everybody was like pitching their stuff and trying to get you to sign up for their whatevers. And this was even the vendors that were there, and you were there like as a vendor, talking about your platform, felt like people trying to help each other and really like, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? And how can I help? And what's the biggest problems you're struggling with? And I just thought it was a really unique community where everybody was like in it to win it together, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think, because podcasting, it depends on when you want to start the clock. It's still very young as a medium form. And I often thought, through the conversations I had with folks, is you jump ahead 15 years, what are those stories that we had last month? What are those going to be like? And I think we're all going to have a chuckle on how pioneering we thought we were, and it ended up being.
Yeah, I felt that I've maybe gotten into this medium too late, too slow, like as it's already had its peak or whatever. But as I talked to many, many hundreds of podcasters there, they said, you know what, the best time to get into this media was yesterday, but the second best time is today. So you picked a good time. So I feel like on a high right now, just still coming back from the event. I'm super excited of all the people I met, including yourself. So instead of talking about podcasting for a little bit, let's talk about your career. So you've worked in supply chain and e-commerce and pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. What all have you done in those areas?
Well, most of it's been tied to technology. So if I go back and it's mostly been in healthcare, but I've been in some really interesting industries. Where I really got started was in hazardous waste. And I had a very good mentor, man named Roy Onany. And he was one who I was just trying to find the next job within the company. And there was this supply chain opening where funny enough, we were using some technology that was some of the early onset of like Google Maps, electronic routing, A to B, but this is more industrial grade. And he was the one who opened my eyes to all of the potential of technology. But furthermore, he really pushed me to understand data and how you can glean a lot of great information. A lot of that's all matured in many industries into data mining, smart data mining, and such. But it's just been really leveraging those skills that he helped me develop, and took that into healthcare and pharmaceuticals. There's just tons and tons of data in pharmaceuticals that helps you, as a patient, ultimately get the right diagnosis and the right medicine.
So you claim yourself as a data guy, and I love that title. So what about data? Is it the raw data itself? Is it the process of refining it and trying to find bits of wisdom out of it? What do you love about data?
Maybe it touches on my OCD side of my personality.
Nice.
It's just another way to take a lot of information other folks might see as disaggregated and make it simple. Get so geeky that I built a database for our wedding, my wife and I, when we got married.
Nice.
Yeah. It was the one where you get all of your names in there. We're keeping track of invitations and printing out envelopes and so on and so forth. And then the nice thing is for anyone who's listening, that's a great way to get started, because ultimately it becomes your Christmas card list.
Oh, very good tip there for any folks that are looking at getting married sometime in the future. Build your own database for your wedding, and you can use that for Christmas cards and maybe invitations to your open house and all the other big events that are going to go on in your life.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. A little bit of, there's always some serendipity in data if you pay attention to it long enough.
So we're going to take a sidetrack here, but what was your database platform of choice to put together your wedding invitations? Was it just like an Excel spreadsheet, or did you have like a custom homegrown website user interface kind of thing?
I'm a real Access nerd,
Nice.
Microsoft Access. So, I get into technology, but I really hit my limit in Access and VBA. And I think that gives me a nice sound base to be able to speak to the folks who really know the more advanced platforms, but at least give them the signal that I know a little bit of what I'm talking about.
Well, it gets a really, really bad rap in my field, the field that I've always been in, software development, because it doesn't scale and it's really hard to deploy. At least the versions I haven't used Access or done an Access upgrade project in a few years, but it's always been where it's kind of like really great for that proof of concept model, or for that model that's just a small department that's going to run a tool, or even like prepackaged people who have built Access databases and Access forms and then package them together into a supportable platform. But in the long run, it's gotten a bad rep in like classical software development database architecture because of the performance and scalability and stuff like that. But I love the ability that anybody with just a little bit of tech skills can get in there and make some really, really cool stuff. And not just as a proof of concept, but to actually use like in the production environment, right? That we can all learn from. I got a great story
for you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so exactly along those same lines. So I was working for a small, what in the supply chain industry they call a 3PL. It's a third-party logistics provider. So this is someone who usually doesn't. In the old days, it was someone who had a phone and a fax machine. They would take orders and then find the right carriers for you. Mm-hmm. We were getting into warehousing, and we needed a inventory application. And I was working with the IT guys, and just to your point, they were giving me some very long projections that this was going to be, a 60-day project. And I said, I'll build one over the weekend and the proof of concept like you're talking about, and build it in Access. Well, fast forward to about a year and a half later, I had left the company, moved on, but they were still using my prototype as the inventory application.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Sometimes we, myself included, many, many times over the last 20 years, have been so caught up in the nuts and bolts and the best practices that I have tended to many times in my past completely over engineer the solution, and I know a lot of other people have too. And it's a problem that we have on the IT side. Is, you want to make it bulletproof. You want to make it where if it goes viral, everybody in the world can use it, and there's not going to be any performance problems. And so you think about all these contingency plans and put all this thought into it. But what you really need is just something to use and work, and like start putting data in.
That's it.
Awesome. So speaking of putting data in, dude, let's talk about PodXRef. So, you know what? I'm not going to give any hints. I gave enough hints at the beginning of the conversation. So tell us, what is the vision behind PodXRef?
Sure. Well, really simply put, it's IMDb styled database online for podcasting, focused on podcasting. It's the shows, the episodes, the guests, personalities, and locations where podcasts, often live podcasts, are held.
Man, I don't know. I love this. I love this relationship to IMDb because there's a software developer that I know who is also in like a garage band, rock band kind of thing that he and his wife and his buddies do, on Thursday nights and weekends and so forth. And they were actually some sort of backup, band in some local movie that a college put together or something like that. Anyway, they got on IMDb, and he's got his own profile on IMDb. And I'm like, dude, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But now you're providing the same service to podcasters so that, dorks like me that can't get on movies, even local college movies, can have a little place of fame of my own.
Yeah, and also, hopefully, if everything goes right, and I put the hard work in, or hopefully continue to put the hard work in, just makes the visibility and searchability for your show that much easier. There's just so much great. Again, we saw it at the movement, but there's just so much great stuff out there in podcasting, and honestly, just between us and your listeners, I think everyone who's into podcasting is just generally smarter, and that's easy to say, and playing to the crowd, but but it's just it's a great learning forum when you don't even think you're learning. It's just as I sometimes like to put it, it's like the Matrix, where they just plug you in and a couple clicks and you know how to fly a helicopter.
There you go. At the end of this episode, you may know Kung Fu, or you may not. I don't know.
Right. So it's a little bit slower in the upload, but it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So what was the inspiration behind this tool? Why did you decide that you wanted to build PodXRef? Is it because you have your own podcast and you want more visibility? Basically, you're solving a problem for yourself, or were you trying to solve it for someone else?
No, I don't have a podcast. I really don't have aspirations for one right now. I'm just so busy with building the website. It's really to solve a problem that I believe that a lot of other folks have in if they're focused on or like certain personalities in podcasting. There's a lot of overlap. And actually, I've got some numbers. I don't have them handy here, but continue to run analysis on the data that we have. And there's just a great deal of overlap. And I think there's a great opportunity to track and even binge listen on some of the personalities that you like, who might be a host on one show, but guests on several others, or they're just a guest. It's kind of hard to go back through the history. So where this started for me is going through iTunes, and I was looking for Brian Regan, who's a comedian. I wanted to see what podcast he showed up on. And it was a real clumsy search, right? I think everyone experiences that. Mm-hmm. But if we had something that was more direct, very structured and precise, it'd be much easier. So I started just fiddling with the data that's already out there, whatever's standardized out there for podcasting, and see if there's a way to automate it. So some trials, some errors on how best to automate it and be smart at it. And we've got a little bit of a hybrid going on right now, but we're building this database, and then now I think we've built a nice structure, and we're going to be opening up to podcasters so we can start getting the sheer volume that's out there into our site.
So what's pretty cool about it, I think you're onto something here, because all of the podcast directories that I've ever seen are, show-based and down to the episode level, and there may or may not be show notes for that episode, right, which encapsulates some of the data. But from the directory perspective, it's just kind of an aggregation of here's all the shows about a topic, say technology or business or comedy or whatever it is. And then there's, for each one of those categories, there's hundreds of shows or thousands of shows. And for each one of those, there's just bazillions and bazillions of episodes out there, podcast episodes. But really tracking the person. So if I'm thinking about like the 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon, right? So like
right.
Who is tied to whom, and how many episodes has Kevin Bacon done? And like as a podcaster, like I have done episodes with over 100 guests now, and I have been a guest on a handful of episodes on other people's shows, right? So how close am I to some of the other people in my field?
That's it exactly. And how do the listeners who really like, your show, Chad, and the way you either interview or are interviewed, how can they get more of you? And that's really the goal. And if you go on the site and when we open it up, which is going to be coming up here in a couple months, a couple weeks, we'll open up. We'll be happy to have you on the site, and then make it easy for everyone to find your previous guests, you, and then as we expand, hopefully you on other shows.
Cool. So let's dive into the nerdy stuff, because I know there's a lot of tech pros on the line that want to hear the bits and bytes. What kind of platform are you building PodXRef on?
So I'm gonna go back to my limits have been pretty much VBA and Access, but I had a friend of mine, a college friend of mine, who put me in touch with some developers, and I understand it's LAMP. Is that sound right? Okay, so right. That's Linux.
Linux, yep.
MySQL, Apache, and PHP.
Nice. Cool. So you are, in this case, you are the CEO, you're the product owner, you're the visionary behind it, and then you've outsourced the development to another firm who can do all this stuff for you.
Yes.
Cool. So what's the process been like the entrepreneurial process? So you came up with the idea and you said, okay, I want to do this PodXRef. It's going to be like an IMDb for podcasters. Then what was the next step? Did you go out and get venture capitalist money? Did you bootstrap it? How did you get started?
Pure bootstrap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been some time, a little bit of, it's been all savings, but and then I've got a regular day job, and as manage sort of the household cash flow into the business cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, dude, I feel you. I feel you there. So what are the goals with PodXRef, meaning from a business side? All right, we talked about how we're going to help the podcasters, but are you going to charge podcasters like a subscription fee to put their information in there, or is it going to be more revenue via like sponsorships and advertising, or something else?
Yeah, sponsorships and advertising. So we've got it set so that we can scale pretty quickly. And get just any podcaster who wants to come in, manage their feeds, manage their episodes, and ultimately we'll be managing their pages. So the more the better, and you can just see how this is going to have the potential, at least on the data side, to grow exponentially. We haven't spent a lot of time on SEO work. So we're going to be getting into that, and then I think it just starts to expand. I get a sense, and I don't know if this is legend or true. I think that's a little bit of how IMDb did start. Is I think they just got a bunch of like SAG and AFTRA data start populating, and then started to expand it and open it up to the real users, or those with permissions to start managing the data internally. So we're going to do the same thing, and then it's just getting the eyeballs, and then if all goes well and we manage it correctly, you become that source for folks to find, again, the talent and the episodes along the way in their search for more and more podcasts.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does IMDb do it? I've never actually looked from like a contributor perspective or done any research on it. Is it like a wiki where anybody can go in and add movies and stuff like that? Or is it only like the IMDb team members that have access to it? Or do, movie producers and other people, what are they doing to input their data?
Again, I don't know. I'm not that close to it. I believe it's a bit of a mix of both. But you do hear, listening to different podcasts, you hear, different stories that give you some insight. I know Adam Carolla often goes on about his IMDb page. He must not be controlling it, because he goes on about how it claims he had Crohn's disease, and he's never had Crohn's disease. So, it's a little wiki-ish, right. I guess, because it's not all wonderfully validated data.
Cool. So yeah, that's a problem anywhere, right? If you don't control the message, somebody else controls the message, and then it's not cool. Then you're having to go back and update them, trying to fight that disinformation. Hopefully try to get people to change the source of the web pages and stuff like that. But that's an uphill climb. But Matt, in just a moment, I want to ask you more details about like the goals of this product and what you want to get out of PodXRef, and maybe some lessons that you can share with us about how the process has been, so we can learn a little bit more about, if we want to start our own website, or we want to start our own entrepreneurship journey, start our own business. What are some of the pitfalls that you faced or hopefully have stepped around? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Okay, we're back with Matt Rehm, the data guy that is building the IMDb of podcasting. So, Matt, you're building PodXRef.com, which is a new site that you're deploying. It might be out right now when this episode goes live. We'll have to check the production calendar and see how it lines up. But it's really about not just about the podcast shows and about the episodes, but really tying the individual people, like the guests and the hosts like myself, as individual actors or individual elements, pieces of metadata, if you will, on this data, on each episode, on each show, so that we can track the individuals by individual. So like, how many times was Adam Carolla a guest on somebody else's show? And where can we find all the information about Chad Bostic? Which, there's a huge demand out there. I'm sure there's probably at least 4 people that want to know that question, one of them being me. So we were talking a little bit about the entrepreneurship journey that you had. This is a bootstrap thing. You've got a day job. This is a site that you would love to build up and get a lot of traction, get a lot of people using this site, so that you can pay the bills via advertisement and stuff like that. What has been maybe some of the biggest struggles or problems from the time that you came up with this idea till where we are now?
Sure. I would have to say it's the trial and error early on. Getting this going was a little bit of, doing another movie reference here is, Batman Begins, where Bruce Wayne, he wants to learn how to fight crime, so he goes into the crime world and just to understand it, and he lives in that world. Not to associate podcasters with crime, but
to associate software development with fighting crime. There we go.
But he wanted to live in it, for a while to really understand it from all different directions. And so, as I built this from originally a bit of a hobby just to see if I could, solve some problems that I was having on finding good podcasts. It's understanding where the data can take me, and then how do I position myself for what is next and what is best, and understanding that there's other folks trying to solve that same problem too. So it's days where the day job is a bit of a challenge, and you don't get much time to to focus on the website. And we've been building, and you mentioned when we're going to be live. So we've got the site is out there. We've got 160 podcasts already in that we've been curating on our side, almost 16,000 personalities you can search from. But where we're going to take it is when we open up to podcasters is where we think it's really going to explode. And so we built the base, and using all of that data is really to understand it. And that's what helped us put ourselves in a position to open it up to podcasters. We didn't want to just build this structure and hand it over to podcasters and say, go for it. We wanted to let them know that they're adding to a database that's already sound, already well structured, and then we've been in it every day, figuring out what's the easiest way for contributors to contribute data. And so when we launched the podcaster manager side of it, hopefully we've made something that's really easy for podcasters, and they'll welcome it and start to see the benefits.
So when did you start working on this project? When did you get the idea, and when did you say, by golly, I'm going to actually get this thing built?
The website went live in a proven, tested level about a year ago.
Okay.
A little less than a year ago. But we didn't put it out there with any fanfare. Again, we just wanted to get something out there and see what we could learn from any comments and just talking to people. So again, it's just taking a little bit, step by step. But building the data, that started maybe about 6 months earlier. When I was building the data, again, just trying to solve the problem for myself on my own laptop, not really having the idea that I could make a site out of it.
Okay, so what was the tool set for that? Were you using Access to pull all this together, or something else?
It was Access. Uh-huh. Yeah, back to the old standard.
Awesome. Yeah, use what you know. Absolutely. We talked about earlier in the episode, using that to solve the initial problem, get a good proof of concept, and then see where you need to make changes. Access is great because of its flexibility. You can change stuff on the fly anytime without spending, weeks and weeks worth of refactoring. So where did you initially go to get the data for your seed set before you launched the MVP a year ago?
Sure. It was every podcast has, if you subscribe to a podcast, there's some underlying structured data. These are the RSS feeds. Uh-huh. And for those who aren't familiar with that, it's a structured XML format. And so just went out and tried to find as many podcasts that were A, popular, and B, diverse. So did a lot of searching, whether it was articles or podcast festivals or iTunes ratings. Wanted to, as we're building this database, it's easy to stay in one genre. I think people start that way when they're listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
They start in the sciences or in the comedy or entrepreneurial self-starting genre of podcasts. But I wanted to make sure that if we're going to be turning this over, wanted to have a personality database that was quite robust.
Awesome. Great. So, Matt, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. Before we go, can you share any parting words of wisdom that you have for our audience, the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye?
Sure. I guess the best thing is believe what you're doing and that there is a finish line at the end. I go back to a marathon that I ran, and I remember when I got to about the 26th mile, it was in a neighborhood, and I kept on making turns. And I was thinking that 22-mile marker is going to be there. It's going to be around the next turn. And then I kept on making turns, and it wasn't there. I'm thinking they didn't put the 22-mile marker out there. And I go around one more turn, and there it is. And you get a little bit of questioning yourself. Is like, am I going to make this? I got, 4.5 miles left. Is every next mile going to be hard? Yeah, it's going to be hard. But boy, the reward at the end, you can't savor it enough. So just keep plugging away. That 22-mile marker, it's there. It's around the corner. Just keep plugging away.
Awesome. And how can we connect with you and with your website?
I'm on LinkedIn, Matthew Rehm on LinkedIn. You can contact me directly at matt@podxref.com, and follow us on Twitter at officialPodXRef.
Great. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value your startup story and the journey that you've had, over the last year and a half now of putting this together. And you're at the 22-mile, maybe the 26-mile, but not quite 26.2 mile of this journey that you've been on. I can't wait until you open it up to me and the other podcasters so that we can start building a great directory of Hello Tech Pros guests and host and see where are my links. That would be very interesting. So Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Chad.
Tech Pros, the biggest thing that I took out of this is, you've got to start somewhere. If you want to finish that journey, if you want to finish that marathon or build that site and get it out there, you have to start with something. So go out and don't try to build it all with all the gold plating and bells and whistles. Find whatever tool that you are quick with, that you can handle, and put together a minimal viable product, put together a proof of concept, and just start working on it. And so that you can see where it's going to excel and where it's going to struggle and where you need to shift directions. And then when you got it figured out, then you'll have that, this is what it is. This is the IMDb of podcasting, and you'll know exactly what your product's about, and you'll have a much better time from then on. You've been listening to Matt Rehm, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/132. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Entrepreneurship Saturday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I will not be talking about work because it's Sunday being unplugged. On Monday, we'll get motivated once again to face the week with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people communication, and Saturday, back to our entrepreneurship. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.